Hi, my name is Antonio Gastelum, and I'm a partner at Meg International Counsel with offices in San Diego and Houston. Today's video is going to be about how FATCA clashes with France's constitution and how France threatens to terminate FATCA unilaterally. Please join us. A few days ago, a number of media outlets published the note that a cross-party group of parliamentary politicians in France issued a report recommending the termination of the FATCA agreement with the United States if the latter does not agree to negotiate to avoid the double taxation of French-American citizens. The report, written by a congressman of the President Macron's political party, recommends that the application of the FATCA agreement should be limited to a group of people of an unspecified amount of income or net worth, and that the tax laws of both countries be aligned in such a way to avoid double taxation. According to Bloomberg, the report also recommends that in case the negotiations fail, that the French should envisage unilaterally pulling out of the FATCA agreement and restricting the transfer of information with the United States. Additionally, the report agreed to lobby in favor of the association called Accidental Americans that represents people that were born in the U.S. or their parents are American or thus are covered by FATCA, even though some of them have no idea they are considered American citizens. Also, the political parties have called on French regulators to remind the banks of that country that they cannot discriminate against their clients based on their nationality or by having ties to the U.S. This is because many banks have preferred not to serve as U.S. citizens or people with ties to the U.S. because of the many complications and high costs to comply with FATCA. So according to the European Banking Federation, there are about 300 accidental Americans in Europe that have or may have been affected by FATCA. This case has already been brought up to France's highest administrative court, known as the Conseil d'État, where it has been argued that FATCA clashes with the Constitution, just as we have mentioned before with respect to Mexico. In the case of Mexico, the Intergovernmental Agreement for the Implementation of FATCA suffers from two defects, and we've been saying this for as long as the agreement was first made known and subsequently signed. First, because the agreement was signed by the Undersecretary of the Treasury in substitution of the Secretary without having the authority to do so. So we think this is a major obstacle for the agreement to have validity in Mexico. Although to this date, the law and the internal regulations for the Treasury, this is the Mexican Treasury, have been modified to provide such authority to the Undersecretary and apply those changes retroactively. We have seen that no mention has been made about the changes or the legislative changes or the changes to the internal regulations of how the ministry operates. But if you go to the law today and you look at the books, the Undersecretary has every authority to sign an intergovernmental agreement with a foreign country, which they didn't have, or he or she didn't have, at the time this FATCA agreement was actually signed by the Undersecretary. So, in second place, the Mexican Constitution, which in good measure was based on the freedoms and ideals first conceived in the French Constitution in 1791, even though the direct source for all versions of the Mexican Constitution was the Constitution of Cádiz of 1812. So the Mexican Constitution necessarily requires of certain and very specific formalities for the government to be able to act against a Mexican citizen or to request, obtain, and utilize information from third parties, which in this case would be the United States, in a legal proceeding against any Mexican citizen. So even though the Conseil d'État in France has not made a decision yet, we will be looking out for any developments of this news, which undoubtedly will bring very interesting consequences, not just for France and the US, but for the rest of the world. as well, and how they decide to handle all of these constitutional controversies with regard to the automatic application and exchange of information. So there you have it. That's today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you will join us again for the next one. Thank you very much.